Hello, what's up, cops? I'm Lydia from Nashville,
Hi, what's up, cops? I am Marcus from Canada.
and we have a lot to discuss today. A lot has been happening. Um, Marcus of Salem Malik, first of all, you are with us.
Oh my God, thank you.
But in all of this, a lot has been happening in Nashville, in Michigan, and also in Canada. If you want to
Yeah,
share, yeah.
yeah. So yeah, no, it was so weird to get COVID for the first time after
Oh
three and
my
a half
gosh,
years. So apparently,
yeah,
vaccines work and like being very strict works.
yeah,
But I'm
yeah,
thankful that it wasn't too bad. But yeah, it hits you like makes you just fatigued but also this had
yeah.
happened during
Mm,
the march of
mm.
we have in Canada three Arabic speaking organizers from Muslim backgrounds decided
Oh,
to rally.
okay.
Um, their communities basically at the beginning, meaning
Mm,
their Arabic-speaking Muslim communities at the beginning,
mm.
and they have been planning this since June. There have been some
Oh.
marches happening in front of school boards in bigger cities with bigger population of Muslims around Canada.
Hmm.
I also want to point out that like when I'm going to mention any ethnic or religious groups in this episode, this is not about
Mm.
um, like telling that they are bad people or anything.
Oh, yeah.
Um, it's about figuring out these
Mm,
nuances of how the importance of demographics like
mm,
ethnic and religious data and how communities with a specific ethnic and religious features connect or disconnect.
mm,
So it's important because like when we lose these data
mm,
and we don't talk about that the Coptic community is organizing or one of the Coptic
mm,
communities organizing with another community or when we lose that this is
mm,
mainly led by immigrants or instead of just saying Canadians organized, we need to be specific about the background of who are the people who organized or started stuff like this. So this
mm,
was just a disclaimer. So
mm,
they have been frustrated, like many folks,
mm,
immigrant folks from conservative backgrounds, and they had rallies or protests in front of school boards um,
mm,
in the month of June during Pride Month,
mm,
or at least when the Pride Month is celebrated in many Canadian
mhm,
school boards. And then they organized, they found that they had been attacked by other folks or counter protests at that time. Many
hmm,
of them actually didn't know, first of all, many of immigrants from conservative or religious backgrounds,
mm,
many of the immigrants from Eastern background in general, they don't have the right to protest in their very own country. They don't practice in their very home country. They don't know how to practice
mhm,
um, protests. And one of the things that they don't know about counter protests. And it's part of practicing your rights is like
mm,
you would go to the street and you would be countered by. So they thought that people are specifically coming after them and attacking them. When I talk to
oh,
when I talk to many folks, why they are coming down the street in front of us and talking against us, or they are talking in front of us. We are peaceful.
mm,
Why are they attacking us? And and many
mm,
of the words need to be unpacked. Like, are they attacking you? If that's like
mm, mhm,
what is being attacked and stuff like that. So I'm just going down the streets to protect my kids, to protect my faith, and those people, other people who are carrying the
mm,
pride flag, are attacking me. So most of these people who organized the protests,
mm,
they they haven't had experience in
mm,
having protests in their own mother countries. They didn't know about counter protests. Most of them, they um, uh, have they have been mobilized by many of
mm,
videos and photos on social
mm,
media that are being cut out of context from
mm,
mainly American conservative and right-wing
mm,
channels. Because also in Canada, we don't have that many uh, mainstream right-wing media.
mm,
So most folks
mm,
who want to hear a right-wing narrative, they
mhm,
listen to Fox News, Newsmax, or
mhm,
Rumble, or other news outlets that are coming
mhm,
basically or based from the US. And then they said after June, we need to
mm,
mobilize a bigger march, a bigger protest. And they called it a very Arabic name, actually. They called it the 1 million person march. The 1
mm,
million person march is very, it's like, it's not a use the term in Western world or in
mm,
English. We heard it sometimes, like very few times at the civil liberty movements,
mm,
um, but it's not very common. But in the Middle East and during the Arab Spring, the millionaire, it's just
mm,
one word. It's not 1 million people march. It's very easy used in Arabic. So that also gives you a reflection
mm,
about how the organizers are mainly Arabic speakers. So they wanted to call
mm,
it millionaire to protect our kids or millionaire
mm,
حماية الأطفال. Um,
mm,
so so again, so they kept organizing more and more, and actually they were really surprised that many white people outside of their circles they wanted to join. At some time,
interesting.
actually, during the organizing, they said, you know what, we are the main organizers. We don't want anybody to join or overtaken or hijack
Oh.
our movement. Yeah, because they didn't have that much experience in organizing.
Mm,
So they felt attacked. They felt because also they haven't done any connection because the kind of
mm,
people who wanted to organize with Muslims for the first time are usually the organizations that
mm,
spread xenophobia
mhm,
and hate against Muslims, against folks coming from the Middle East, against Arabic speakers. So they were
mhm,
surprised, they were shocked, they were so,
mm,
and you will see how these anchors or leaders who joined Muslim and
mhm,
Arabic speakers, they have a long history when you go on their blogs or vlogs, have a long history of hate content against Muslims, against Arabic speakers, against immigrants. And now, because they found that immigrant Arabic speaking Muslims and others, other immigrants, are organizing a big thing, they wanted to come and join. And in many cities, especially the bigger cities with many immigrants, we saw many folks coming down the streets with bigger
So
numbers.
I have a couple questions. So this was a multi-city protest, but on the same day.
Yeah, so they did it around the
Interesting.
same
Okay.
time, even with the three time zones in Canada. They did it so it would be in sync. Um, People are going down the streets, especially they went
Fast.
to big legislative buildings,
Mm,
city halls, at the parliament was one of the biggest protests. And
mm,
you would see in bigger cities, most of the folks who were there um, are immigrants. Many,
mm,
they were visibly Muslims, like women with hijab. And guess what? We found also Coptic Orthodox priests um,
oh wow, the
at
priest.
one of the marches. And that gives us an idea because the church
Mm,
um, didn't want, the Coptic Orthodox Church didn't want to officially say go to
mm,
marshes, but they released actually one of the dioceses of the two
mm,
dioceses, sorry, the three dioceses in Canada released two statements full of fueling that momentum. with words that are brought directly from far right um,
Wow.
news outlets that are usually used to fuel hate against us immigrants.
Hmm. Fascinating. And so it was mostly first gen out on the streets for protesting?
So I would say, yeah, actually, that's an interesting take because
Mm.
the invitation was to take out your kids that day from
Mhm.
school and then to take
Oh,
them with
wow.
you. So you would see many. First of all,
Wow.
there were many kids, and many kids, which also which was to put your
Mm,
kids in something like this. Many people were critical of,
mm,
and I like you would see many folks have been really um,
mm,
angry, and the kids were seeing the anger, and the kids were
mm,
reflecting with more anger as well. Yes, folks would say like the protest was very peaceful and stuff, but people were very charged. And of course, they were
hmm,
faced by counter protests of um, trans and queer folks and allies
mm.
who saw that this is an attack on their rights.
Fascinating. Fascinating.
So the main
Mm,
issues the protesters wanted to know is
mm,
they say that we don't want pride celebration at schools. We don't want pride flags at schools. We want to take out um, any teaching about gender diversity
mm,
or orientation in the sex education curriculum or any parts of the curriculum. Many misinformation has been filling the requests. Um,
mm,
because one of them, for example, they would say, "Oh, we are not celebrating. Why they are celebrating queer and trans folks, the LGBTQ folks, for a whole
mm,
month at schools, while we are not being celebrated? We want our month too." Most of them they don't know that there is a full month in the province, the largest province of Canada,
mm,
Ontario, celebrating Egyptian Heritage Month, the month
mm,
of July, and the
mm,
month of October is the celebration of the Islamic Heritage Month as well, which is coming up soon. So
mm,
you don't know that, and there is the Hispanic month, and there is like, so there are
mhm,
many months are
mhm,
celebrating people from diverse backgrounds. It's not just so many misinformation of and like all
mm,
the news pieces about like, oh, they are gonna convert my kids, they are gonna
mm,
transition them without me knowing, they are gonna enforce the pronouns on them, like many
mm.
news pieces that are cut out of context are being circulated.
Hmm. Very so their demands are in essence just no Pride Month in schools, but also to add their own ethnic or religious education into the schools,
Of course, it's filled by
or it's just random, just anti-queer
yeah,
stuff.
yes,
Okay.
oh
Okay.
yes, it is like because again we have like really strong rules in
Mm,
Canada against talking against LGBTQ folks.
mm,
Uh, so folks would say the argument that we know inside churches all the time. We
mm,
don't, what is it? We don't hate
mhm,
the
mhm,
sinners,
mhm,
but we hate the sin kind of stuff.
mm,
So they would say, we don't hate, we love everybody, we don't hate LGBTQ people, but we hate their actions, we hate their lifestyle. So come on, it's so you hate them,
yeah,
and even calling it a lifestyle, even call it
mhm, mhm,
gender
mhm,
ideology. You're just
mhm,
giving yourself um, like the green light to
mm,
discriminate against people because you're calling them an ideology. And this
mm,
happened within our community with
mm,
Muslims, for example. You call it like the Islamic ideology, which the right wing say it as well.
Mm, mhm,
And you label all Muslims that they
mhm,
have the
mhm,
Islamic ideology, and we know that the Islamic ideology, you're talking about terrorism.
mm,
So this is like like labeling group of people with
mm,
calling them an ideology is
mhm.
very, very dangerous, and it kills
Yeah,
people.
yeah. Or it's just a bucket for you to frame however you want to frame identities. So, um, yeah, I feel like people when they say Islamic ideology or gender ideology, they just want to at that point anything goes. So they can put up any statistic and be like, well, this is this happens in Muslim dominant countries and blah blah blah. So this is Muslim ideology and blah blah blah. Um, yeah, so when we're not using specific terms, people can make any statement. Oh wow, okay.
Yeah,
Marcus came in
so
with the receipts.
yeah, so
We're
we
looking at a
saw
photo, y'all.
we are looking at a photo of yeah, a Coptic Orthodox priest in one of the marshes, and we see the sign in the back like hands off our kids,
Mm.
my child, my choice,
You
and
know, that is so interesting. My child, my choice. Because of the abortion conversation also within that context of saying it's my body, my choice, but saying my child, my anyways, this has
yeah,
a lot of interesting intersections.
um, yeah, yeah, it is. Yeah, it's definitely fascinating, and we see also. Let me share
Yeah.
something else. Um,
Yeah, because it obviously comes in from those protests, but I assume they're not pro-choice.
so
Mm,
here, actually, I'm sharing the one of the
mm-hmm.
statements of um, that the Bishop Mina, the Bishop of the Diocese of Mississauga, Vancouver, and Western
So this
Canada,
is the
and
second one.
that's the second one. Yes, that
Okay.
there was the
Why did
first.
he repeal the first one? Or
No, didn't repeat it. It just updated it. They were gearing
oh,
for it. So on August 30th, that was the first letter regarding
mm-hmm.
gender ideologies, and the
Okay.
second letter was on September 9th.
And
Um,
change the title.
um, yeah, because it's like, oh, I think the first one was like, oh, we are seeing Muslims organizing for this. Are we gonna join? We just
Mm,
need to tell people in the first letter, they are telling people that, you know what, we are seeing what's happening. Let's, um, we are just observing, and there is nothing substantial in that other than misinformation and the use of gender ideology again.
mm-hmm.
So he's saying, or the person who wrote it, we have increasingly been hearing from many, especially parents and grandparents, who have expressed deep concerns about gender ideology programs, such as Drag Queen Story Hour and other such activities taking place within our broader education
Yeah.
system.
You know what's really interesting? They're not even citing any of this. So they're
No,
making claims without any very direct, like, we had a report from this school at this time that this was happening. So
yeah,
it's just very like inflammatory libel language of just we want to say what we want to say, like the bucket.
yeah, and they are also. It's interesting because in
Mm,
what we read here, it's the use of the gender ideology thing, and then they say just they throw something like this, the drag hour at the library,
mm.
and like how many school boards in Canada do that? How many events happened
Yeah.
for that? Usually this
Yeah.
happened in like very liberal,
Mm,
like very progressive parts of town. Even if a school board does it, it's not
mm,
like it's not a
mm,
main event. You can opt out of it,
mhm.
as long you can also opt out with when if you hate Muslims and or if you say that you like them but
Yeah.
you hate their practices, you can opt out
Mm,
of any, which is still hateful though. You can opt out.
yeah.
You have the right to opt out of any event that celebrate
Mm,
Muslims,
mm,
and we know that many Copts do that too, and they put their kids in exclusively Coptic
mhm,
schools. So there are many ways like you're not forced for any
mhm,
of these. One of the things too they say like, oh, people are forced. We are
mm,
forced into this ideology. The reality
mm,
is there are at least five choices that you can opt out
mm,
of
mhm,
any curriculum, not just
mm,
the curriculum that talks about these things. You can
mm,
also put your kids at homeschooling, which actually starting to 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 be a movement inside conservative Christian spaces and inside the cultures.
mm,
You can put your kids at private schools. There are many ways that
mm,
that proves that you are not forced uh, about this.
mm. I'm also wondering what they feel is like the end goal of this too, in kind of eradicating, like, having a mutual respect, or at least within a larger society, being able to respect another person is just fundamental, because if someone were to go to the doctor and they're a black woman, and the doctor is going to deny that they have pain, that could lead to her death, in the same sense that a queer person with all this hate speech going around could go to the doctor, could go to a lawyer, and be denied treatment, or being seen, or being heard, and that lead to severe repercussions. So to me, like, even to think through it, um, it's only on the basis of hate that people are protesting, and not on the sense of what happens to a society when we're not even able to say that we can respect everyone in the society, but we're going to deny them representation in the schools, representation in literature, representation in government. It's just absolutely ridiculous. But it doesn't surprise me too that this kind of faction of people who are making this argument are from a background within, larger communities of color, that they're a very privileged class. So they're very used to. I would actually be very interested in seeing kind of their track history of excluding other communities as well. Because I feel like people often think, well, this person is Muslim, so don't they know what it feels like to be discriminated against? Or this person's Coptic, so don't they feel what it feels like to be discriminated against as a person of color? But I you know, I think we need to be a lot more nuanced about, those ideas too, of, like, these people are very much used to, oppressing or abusing within their own communities other people. So this is just, like, another tally, of being, like, anti-queer, that, you know, it's just another tally on their roster. So this is the letter
Yeah,
from the
and
bishop, the second one.
the we're still at the first one, and actually because you
Still, okay.
reminded me about the rights and the selective use of rights, um, and the weaponization of
Yeah, it
laws.
doesn't make sense to me too, as conservatives who are always touting individual rights, and it's like, well, okay, within your
Yeah,
ideology, this makes sense, right? Within your beliefs, this makes sense to just offer respect to everyone. But yeah.
and they are saying here, as clearly articulated by the Section 2A of our Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. This is like in the attachment to the Canadian Constitution. Every person has equal fundamental freedoms to live accordingly to their um, cons- concise and religious,
Mhm.
and that every person has the right to live in liberty and security of the person set, as set out in Section 7 of the same charter. So
Mm,
again, they are like using this just for them exclusively. We can
mhm,
label
mhm.
you as gender ideology. We can through um, words that are identified as hateful, but
mm,
you need to respect our rights to use these words, even though they are labeled as hateful by you.
mm,
And this one actually it struck me in the second letter, and it says a special message from His Grace Bishop Mina to his congregants. In recent time, it has become an increasingly evident that the world is undergoing significant transformation. So getting up to some fear mongering here, like some
mhm,
suspension
mhm,
stuff, and also this is a big issue. Was like, you're teaching like
mm,
is that حرية مجد أولاد Allah? Are you teaching
mm,
the
mhm,
freedom in Jesus Christ or
mhm,
the scarcity and the fear
mhm,
of this world? So what kind of teaching are you? I could understand that in a motherland was a lot of oppression. You
mm,
talk about the afterlife. You're talking about that the fear. You're talking about
mm,
like, but here you have a lot more freedoms to be yourself and to practice um, what you like. You
mm,
have a lot more freedom, and then you keep putting your congregants
mm,
under fears. And he said these changes have raised
mm,
concerns as they involve the normalization of ideologies. Again, you're labeling
mm,
group of people,
mm,
ideology and behaviors that are contrary to biblical morals and Christian ethical values. This statement in itself is not accurate at all because many other Christian groups,
mhm,
even bigger than the Coptic Orthodox Church, they see that it's not contrary to biblical morals or
mm,
Christian ethical values. So having like talking as if you have the only authority,
mhm,
what is a Christian value or what is
mhm,
biblical moral and what is not, this is very inaccurate, misleading, and manipulative.
mhm,
And then actually, and this is the point that I wanted to talk about here.
mm,
And whenever we are faced with challenges, the Lord always taught us to fast and pray. So instead of inviting them to go to protest, they are fasting and praying.
mm.
Um, is that because many of the folks who are organizing this are Muslims? One
Such
question,
a
and this
weird letter.
and the second thing is, are you do not want to liberate yourself against
Mm,
a liberal government that protects the right of the
mm,
LGBTQ people, and then if they won in the next election, they are not gonna like hold you
mm,
accountable that you threw hate against us. So this is you are also playing a very political game here, and you keep labeling yourself as not political or we're not playing games. You do
mm,
across our diocese to renounce the evil one and all the unclean works he is spreading around us.
mm,
And then he would say, yes, so again, to give us the wisdom to teach our children the truth and protect their innocence and purity. And again, he's mentioning in particular, to play for the protection of our children
wow.
and to pledge for their purity. Guess what? Coptic Pleasure, and if you haven't followed
Mm,
Coptic Pleasure, please follow them. Um,
mm,
they wrote a post about sex education curriculums that
hmm,
are offered in churches. One of the sex curriculum, education curriculum
hmm,
books are called Purity, an Orthodox Christian curriculum. And in that purity book and the purity that is
mm,
Ambamina is talking about, one of the excerpts from that purity book, it says, Satan claims that mutual consent is enough for a man and a woman to practice sex or its precursors of sexual touching before or outside of marriage. Again, this is clearly satanic teaching. So in here, you are saying that
whoa,
consent is satanic. So this is how you are teaching kids
whoa,
to be pure.
mm,
You want to read the second quote I talked about?
yeah. However, Satan talks about mutual consent before and outside of marriage, which shows that he knows that these relationships are inherently wrong. And somehow, by the mutual approval of the couple, he tries to justify it. Wow. This is
So,
wild.
so it's this is in the purity, the official purity
Mm,
uh, education book for kids. You have
mm,
issues with sex before marriage as a dogmatic issue in the church. You can keep it. You don't like. I'm not necessarily challenging this at the moment, but do not
mm-hmm,
mislead people, including
mm,
kids, that
mm.
consent, we are against consent, and it's not
Yeah,
pure to be in consensual relationship just because you have a
yeah,
problem with sex before marriage.
yeah, yeah. And I also, you know, this is such an interesting thing to write two letters about and for it to live in your head for so long because they would never have a response like this about the Coptic survivor movement or about any of the harm that happens to Coptic kids in Coptic churches. So to me, it's a little bit hypocritical if you're not protecting Coptic kids in Coptic churches to then superimpose those, you know, ideas of purity, which we know is strongly attached to rape culture. Um, to superimpose those ideas and be like, well, everyone has to follow them when you don't even have the track record of protecting your own kids, you know? Um, it's just extremely hypocritical. And I feel like you can't enter a conversation about caring about children and caring about um, protecting their innocence and purity uh, when you're actually clearly not, because you can't even do that in your own space.
And that would lead somebody
Yeah.
like Egyptian Knight 83 on
Mm,
Instagram, or Kilo Sarib on Facebook would try it. Like they became really frustrated from this hypocrisy,
mm,
especially being told about it with like lots of lots of trolling online, lots of you're not just when you are doing this, when you are
mm,
having these statements that are running through you, the community, you are fueling
mm,
hate against your very own LGBTQ Copts. You're like
mhm,
we kind of othering LGBTQ people as if they are
mhm,
aliens or somebody who's like, no, we have many LGBTQ cops, and you know
mm,
that as clergy, and you keep talking
mm,
about, oh, we're having a problem of
mm,
LGBTQ people in our community. How can we deal with it and stuff like that? You keep talking about this, and so it's not you have very own LGBTQ people. So don't be that hypocrite. So many people
mm,
actually are talking about their own experiences within the Coptic Orthodox community, how they were bullied, how they've been put into harm,
mm,
and it's awful to go through stuff like that, and actually to weaponize kids and to make them carry signs like this, and they don't know uh, the
mm.
intentions
Wow.
behind it. So,
Mm. That's terrible. That's terrible to see a child hold up a sign like that. Yeah. I think I always like to think of solutions when we talk about problems. I don't know what the solution is to this because it seems like a very intentional I don't know, slide into or an intentional push um to define what Coptic is in order to feel like in order to create a hierarchy of who's at the top of Coptic culture and who should be left out. So I think that's like really the bigger picture that's happening. So I appreciate that you brought out that there are queer Coptic people within our community. This is not like an external issue that's coming in, and like the government enforcing and the schools enforcing, but this is um, something we have to negotiate, and the church hierarchy is negotiating it as we need to keep ourselves on top, um, and that means aggressively pushing people out. So yeah, basically I hope people know that this is like not about religion. It's not about God. It's not about a genuine search for God, even like a genuine desire to know God and to be Christian in the Coptic sense, or to be Muslim in the Muslim sense. But it's just about reinforcing hierarchy when they feel like there are uh they have to stay on top. And to stay on top, there have to be many, many people at the bottom. And to keep that going, you have to spread hate, and you have to make people fight each other while you just stay at the top and write these letters and say, you know, Allah mahabba. um and yeah, so it's extremely problematic. I know a lot of people will say just ignore it, or you know believe what you want to believe. I believe what I want to believe. But at the end of the day, this we have to negotiate, and we have to not even negotiate, but we have to be in conversation about what's the larger issue happening within Coptic communities, and that is that the hierarchy, whether realistically or unrealistically, I believe it's unrealistic, believe that they are losing some sense of power, and they have to keep the masses fighting with each other instead of really understanding how can we create a community that is based on care and love and godliness, and not based on hate. I would love to see one Coptic community really take the effort to say we're going to base a community not off hate, not off breaking off people, but really just on love, on that principle, and see what happens.
I think I
Yeah.
really like actually your thought about solutions, and I think at Progressive
Mm.
Copts, we saw
Mm.
how many Copts uh, have
Yeah.
engaged in a conversation. I think actually we need to have conversations. We need to
Yeah.
have conversations on multi levels. If somebody
Yeah.
have a capacity to get into the weeds or
Yeah.
the lion's den and to listen to folks who have questions
Mm.
about um, what is it to
Mm.
be what is it to be queer or trans
Yeah.
person? What is happening inside churches? Sorry, inside schools? What has been taught at sex education curriculums? Stuff like that. And like, if you have capacity, listen to
Mm.
people that have questions around this and listen to them
Yeah.
without being defensive. Try to listen more, and then
Mm.
challenge some wording that they have.
Mm.
Could you
Mm.
tell me what is a gender ideology? Where did you get this from? Um, and
Mm.
if they told you like try to be compassionate with them, like, oh,
Mm.
so are you trying to label a group of people as an ideology? How does this feel about you when it's
Mm.
used in the motherland in Egypt
Mm.
to kick you out or to discriminate against you, for example? As if you are an ideology. You're not a
Yeah.
person.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. Try to listen to
Mm.
people and try to tell them about how important sex education curriculum is, how
Yeah.
important that like we need to talk about consent, and actually consent is purity too. Sex
Mm.
education is
Mhm.
purity too, and also
Mm.
why purity should be sad. Purity
Mhm.
should be fun. Purity
Mm.
should be pleasurable too. A
Mm.
lot of things. Why are we a community that is enjoying sadness and calls that
Mm.
purity? Um, Why can't we do both? We can be sad at some time. We can be pleasurable
Mm,
and playful at other times. When folks go down on pride parades and celebrate and
mm,
be naked, not nude, or they
mm,
abide by laws. Also, one of the things that they say, oh, in pride parades, they are all nude and naked. No, they can't do that because our very conservative laws in the US and Canada prohibit
mm,
nudity on the streets.
mhm,
So if they got nude, they will get pulled by the police. That's it. So
mm,
there are a lot of misinformation. If you have
mm,
the capacity to deconstruct and listen to people concerns, do that too. Uh, Conduct a conversation and maybe try to challenge people from your own family with,
mm,
and also honestly, this is one of the things that it gets me
mm,
really frustrated. We have a lot of
mm,
health and education professionals in our Coptic community. We pride ourselves in that. And if you are a
mm,
health or education professional or a professional that know about these things, speak up. Speak up.
mm,
If you are a therapist, if you are a medical professional, if you are,
mm,
speak up. I am trained and this is what I know.
mm,
Um, One of the things that could be done, I hope it's been done honestly, to really report
mm,
any licensed professional who discriminate against queer and trans folks or other folks because that's against their practice at their colleges, which give them, or an association
mm,
or the state, which give them the license to practice. So there are many solutions to issues, and imagine our community, an informed community, when a misinformation letter like this happen or a statement like this happen, and then
mm.
group of physicians, educators, therapists
Yeah,
would talk to a patient and say, you know what, it's full of misinformation. We
yeah,
can't talk about this in that way. We are trained, you are not.
yeah.
And we need to keep our community safe and hopeful in a new
Mhm,
country. We got out of oppression in the motherland, and we are offered an
mm,
opportunity to be celebrated and to celebrate diversity and freedoms. Um,
mhm,
that's not impure. That's not worldly.
mm,
This is a main intention of a Christian life, I guess, if you are teaching that.
mm, mm. Yes. We'd love to hear your feedback on this episode. Please be sure to watch the video so you can see all the content, but also, um, yeah, drop us your feedback and we'd love to hear from you all. It would be great to do a live recording one day with everybody and see if people can comment in real time too. That would be very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, good
And
idea.
send us your ideas of what we should talk about. We kind of try to keep it up on what's going on in the news and in our communities. So, yeah, share us some news articles, what's going on, and we will comment on it. Yeah. Thank you, Marcus, for your time. And we will see you all. And thank you all for listening. We will see
Thank
you
you, Lydia.
all soon. Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.